Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and today on the podcast, we are in episode 2 of a 5-part series on barista competitions. And we are not talking about why you shouldn't enter competitions, which is what I'm kind of known for encouraging. But what we are talking about is why you should enter barista competitions. So, yesterday, we talked about the positive aspects of entering barista competitions and why you should think about doing it and what you'll get out of it. Today, we are talking about managing your expectations of doing this usually very first hard thing that baristas do in their career if they are competing for the first time. You ready? Let's do it. This podcast is brought to you by Mapper Forward's new Patreon community, the Global Coffee Think Tank. Check the show notes or head to patreon.com/mapperforward to find out how you can become a member today. Okay, so managing your expectations going into barista competitions. And what I would encourage you to do is think of going into your first time competing as your first sort of pop-up business. And I know that you're not going to end up at the end of this road with a lot of money or with any money, but you are going to need a budget. You are going to need support. You are going to need to make sure that you manage the money that you're using for this project. You manage the time, you manage the resources. And you are going to come out of the end of this either having been profitable, not just financially, but profitable, or having made a loss. Being able to understand how you can do that is something that we'll cover in a future episode. But coming into it with the mindset that this is a pop-up business that's going to have a finite amount of time that it's going to last, and that could be from the time you decide to enter to the end of your first regionals, and you don't progress to the nationals, but that's fine. That's the time that the pop-up lasted. And we'll talk about why that's not something you should see as failure in a future episode in this series. But if you approach this from the perspective that this is your first pop-up business, or a pop-up business, it helps you in managing your perspectives of how everything comes after that. It helps your planning. It helps the way that you communicate with others. It helps you make decisions about what kind of resources you need and don't need, and whether it's worth the investment or not the investment. The next thing that I want to talk to you about is a very sobering fact that kind of links into the idea of it being a pop-up. And that is that it is highly unlikely that you will become the world barista champion. And the reason is because only one person of the thousands of people that enter through regionals from around the world, only one person gets to become the world barista champion. And that doesn't mean that it's not going to be you. It's just that managing your expectations that it is highly unlikely that it will be you is important so that you can pace yourself in the journey to becoming the world barista champion. A lot of people that I have seen compete are devastated when they've entered their first regionals. They haven't made it through to the finals, and they feel that they're being crushed by the defeat. These are people who really thought they were going to go the whole way. If you can manage your expectations by understanding that this is a long path, it is a long road, it is a very difficult road, much like small business. Success is not guaranteed. Success, in fact, is highly unlikely. And if you can really embrace that, I think that it will most likely be the thing that gets you further. because you're not battling a whole bunch of demons from within inside your mental health that are saying to you, you're a failure, you couldn't do it, blah, 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 blah. If you know that the road is longer than you're anticipating and harder than you're anticipating, it will probably lean towards your success. This brings me to the next thing that I would encourage you to manage, and that's your ego. Figure out why you want to do this. A lot of people that I speak to, and I think this is a big reason why I have a problem with barista competitions, a lot of people do it because they want to be famous. And so I would encourage you to manage your ego. Manage the expectations of what you want out of this so that the most valuable win that you're looking for isn't getting famous and getting recognized and getting popular. The next thing I want to kind of manage your expectations about is the expense that's involved. It is very expensive to get to the World Barista competition. In the order of, from the competitors that I have spoken to that have made it through to the finals, it's somewhere in the order of $100,000. And the expenses involved in that for the whole journey are travel expenses, coffee, because usually very expensive coffees are required for that level of competition. It's the expense of getting coaches, the expense of buying equipment, the expense of hiring consultants to help you with roasting and with doing all the ancillary things that are required. So know that it is a very expensive endeavor to get to the World Barista competition. Knowing this can help you figure out the path that you need to plot to get to where it is that you're hoping to get to. Something else that I would like to help manage your expectations on. A lot of people feel that if they don't win, that they've lost, that it's some sort of a failure. It isn't. And the reason I say that is because it goes back to this skill that I think barista competitions are wonderful for, and that is the skill of learning how to do something very hard. Just by being courageous enough to put yourself in the arena. And if you've never heard the speech by Roosevelt it's called The Man in the Arena, look it up. Because by doing something hard, you are putting yourself in the arena to compete and to put yourself out there. And that's very vulnerable, and it's a very strong and valuable character to build, or part of your character to build. The final thing that I want to share with you about managing your expectations is this is going to be incredibly stressful. You will need a team to do this, and you will need support. And the stress that's involved in going on this journey can be far greater than what you anticipate. Learning things like meditation, breathing exercises, making sure you sleep really well and that you eat really well, and making sure that you have a team around you whose values are aligned with your value as a competitor in this competition are going to be really important. And again, this is how the same kind of advice that I give people entering into business. This is a small pop-up that could turn into a long-term business, but the strategies for approaching becoming a competitive barista are very similar to the strategies that I would give to any consulting client. It will be stressful. It will be expensive. It will challenge your understanding of who you are, and it's meant to. If you do this right and you do it well, you will be a different person at the end of this competition. You will know more about yourself. You will know more about what you aspire to in your career. And from where I'm sitting, They're all really great things. Look at me continuing to speak positively about barista competitions. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks, friends. If you enjoyed this video, here's what you should check out next. Consider supporting Map It Forward on Patreon and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell before you leave.